will host a panel on the inspiring subject of this convention, that is nurturing the divine seed. And I am Patrizia Calvi, secretary of the Italian section, and I will share it with Brother Douglas Keene, board member of the American section, who is going to be the vice president of the American section. Brother Narayanan, treasurer, Indian section, and Isis de Resende, president of the Inter-American Federation, Brazil. So, we will start with Brother Narayan that will cover the Indian aspects on the subject. So please, Brother Narayan.
Am I audible? Yeah. No. Can I use the mic?
Turn it on.
Yeah. About a few minutes back, we had a discussion on what we are going to talk, what we are going to discuss. So I suggested that to make the discussion with little rich, I will give some Indian aspects which appears in the Vedas and Upanishads, especially in the Isha Upanishads, which gives more details about manifestation. When we talk about the divine seed, what the divine seed is doing here and what we are, so all these things has to be intellectually understood first. Not philosophically, not historically, nor through any books or anything, but psychologically. We are a human being with a psychological faculty, what we call as manas and buddhi, the consciousness in us. So it will be better that if you understand the structure within which we are, and the structure in which what is the relation to the soul or the divine aspect within us, then intellectually if you understand that, it will be easy for us to formulate one's own path and develop and understand the thing. So I'll be taking a few minutes as I have understood this manifestation. Just explain what I have understood this, then accordingly we can proceed on that. So according to Theosophical literature and the Vedas and Upanishads, which are all same, there is a higher and lower creation, a higher and lower hemisphere, and we are in the lower hemisphere. This lower hemisphere has got three aspects. One is the substance, the substantial aspect. There is a life, the vital aspect, and there is the consciousness. And what we are actually, we are a coordinating point in the mind of the instrumentation. When we call a system, we are in a system called human being, in which there's a physical existence consisting of our physical body, and it's a living physical existence in the sense that we have life flowing through us, and there is a consciousness which interacts with the objective world. This is where we are. So we should not assume that we are the self or we are the soul and all that. To be practical, we are what we are a coordinating point in our mind. So then understanding this, then let us see what this divine presence within us, from where it has come, why it has come. So we have got in the secret doctrine, the one has become the many. This one, or in Indian terms we call it Brahman, has multiplied himself into many. These many are the units of the multiplicity. We can say that the divine exists everywhere. Within us also, the divine exists. So the first time in creation, in time and space, a subjective consciousness is rising. Up to now, the subjective consciousness is our ego. It's a coordinating point in the system only. Actually, it is an instrumentation for the divine presence to interact and experience the objective world. So we should know that we should shift our allegiance from the instrumentation, from the mental ego, towards the divine presence. It is the divine presence which has taken birth again and again for the experience. And every time when it takes a birth, it creates its own mental, vital, physical system as an instrument to interact with this objective world. So we should be very clear about this position. So we should know that we are stationed in the mind as a coordinating point. What happens in the night? Where this coordinating point has gone? Where is the consciousness in night? So half of life, the human life is unconscious in sleep and whatever happens there. And the rest of the time, you are an ego, in the mental ego. So it's a very poor situation. We should understand very clearly that 50% of our life only is available for approaching the divine presence, and we should not waste that. Our life should be a movement towards the divine presence and allow it to manifest. That's what we call as a nurturing. So how can we nurture the divine presence? Unless you know something about it, you experience about it, we can only have an intellectual knowledge from the books. But to experience it is the best way of coming into contact with that, fuse with that. Now let us see. Normally, we have seen that we should use our scientific knowledge to understand what I am telling. Of course, I am a commerce graduate. I don't have a background in science, but whatever little I know, I will try to connect. We have a field of forces, the inconscient, at the time of creation, or just after the creation, what is described in physics as the electromagnetic field, the gravity and the strong and weak nuclear force. These are the forces on that. It is through which we have evolved. Our form has evolved out of this. And the consciousness also is emerging out of this. So whatever knowledge we have, it's an acquired by the human mind and deposited in the subconscious of the terrestrial human collective consciousness. When a child is born, how it knows that how to walk and, there's a natural movement. These are supplied by the subconscious bank which has been accumulating for millions of years out of the human experience in this world. But the real truth, the real knowledge is above us, above our brain. So the question is, regeneration, Radhaji's book is the regeneration of the lower nature by the higher nature. A regeneration is required. At present, it is only a beginning instrumental aspect. We have an instrument, we have a soul inside, and we have got some ideas regarding that, but practically how to do it. This is what the nurturing of the seed should relate to. Any questions after now? You want to ask any questions? Yeah.
So life is a mystery. It's true. And as said, it goes well beyond the conventional knowledge. Nothing that thought can understand or language describe. But we are lucky enough to have philosophy who can say us something more about it. And I would like to quote this from the Secret Doctrine, because theosophy encourages us to observe, and it teaches us about an absolute, infinite, omnipresent, divine principle, which is the source and substratum of all. It is the causeless cause and the rootless root of all. It is impersonal, immutable, and unconditioned. It is the one and only eternal reality. And so I ask our brother Doug to add something more.
The divine seed has many names, some of which have just been mentioned, but the divine spark, the eternal, the monad, the double monad or triple monad, and in one of our special books, Light on the Path, Mabel Collins addresses this as the song of life. The song of life is the divine nature. And I always was drawn to a passage in part 2 of the book number 5, where she says, listen to the song of life. Listen to the song of life, but particularly struck by the note that follows. Look for it and listen for it in your own heart. At first, you may say it is not there. When I search, I find only discord. Look deeper. If again you are disappointed, pause and look deeper again. There is a natural melody, an obscure font in every human heart. It may be hidden over and utterly concealed and silenced, but it is there. At the very base of your nature, you will find faith, hope, and love. And I think of this frequently when we see people behaving badly, or when we feel we are just our physical body, our emotions, our mind, that we have to realize that there is a divinity in us, not only in us, but in everyone of our group, everyone in the world. No matter how deep it's buried, look for it. And you may not find it, you may not feel it, you may not recognize it, you may not identify with it, but it is there. And the passage conveys the thought of continuing to look deeper. I think we're all here today because we have started on that journey to look deeper into ourselves and to others and realize how we're connected and the unity of humankind and all life in the universe. Thank you.
Isis, kindly share with us your opinion on this divine seed.
Yes. I liked very much the way Shikara Agniotti said yesterday that the thing is that the divine seed is planted in material ground, in material soil. And the divine seed is divine in its own nature, but not in the soil of matter. So the thing is how to make this divine seed grow in matter itself. And well, there is a quote from Geoffrey Hodgson that I like very much, and unfortunately, I have it in Portuguese, and I translated back to English, and I have to excuse myself because my English is not the English of Geoffrey Hodgson, and I'm not a native speaker, but I will try to share what I understood from what Geoffrey Hodgson said. And he said, since man is a self-conscious being, he has the power of submitting himself, or in this case, men and women, he or she has the power of submitting himself or herself to a process of simulation for spiritual ripening. He can speed the realization of his or her goal through the application of in a deliberate form of the principles that govern the normal growth. That means, he's comparing our spiritual development with the development of a garden, And the development of a garden is very much linked to nature itself. But if we live just like that, as we would say in Brazil, as God will give, like do nothing because God will take care of it, it will be much slower, If we live just like that, we plant something, maybe in 12 years it will be a tree. But if we plug the soil, if we give the proper amount of nutrients, if we give the proper amount of water, then the seed we plant may grow, may become a bush in 5 years. So when we talk about nurturing the divine seed, gardens are not self-conscious, Plants are not self-conscious. We are self-conscious. So we can deliberately apply the rules that govern the normal growth in order to make quicker and safer our spiritual development.
Many thanks, dear Isis. Would you like to add something?
As I have been telling you earlier, I am giving you a structural side of the divine seed. When you say structural side, we are talking about a universal truths. What actually we mean by truths? There are mental truths, there are vital truths, there are physical truths. So we should have an idea of what actually the word truth means. Truths are the essential ideas for creation in the divine consciousness. So, what is the process of manifesting these ideas and producing this form, this universe? The ideas has to enter into time and space. Then it becomes potentials in creation. And when a human being or any plant or animal try to manifest that, it becomes factual. So we have the essential, then in time and space it becomes potential, and those who have the instrumentation and consciousness correctly can manifest it and made it as a fact. This process we should understand. Always we are bombarded by ideas, but mental ideas. How to access the wisdom, the spiritual ideas. That's a sadhana. In India we call it as a sadhana, ascending from mind towards the higher consciousness, then the higher consciousness descending in and regenerating and transforming our lower consciousness. So overall it is a role of the evolving consciousness. The whole story of evolution is an evolution of consciousness with an instrumentation called the human being. Now when we say that the divine is present everywhere, in a plant, where is the divine? Any idea where is the divine? Outside? That's the flower. The flowering of the divine vibrations in. For example, in India, we call Tulsi, which denotes a devotion. We offer it to Krishna. How do we know that? Tulsi is vibrating with devotion. That's the thing you will have an access. If you have an access to the higher consciousness, like in Theosophy, we say that our next level is intuition. At the intuitive level, if you perceive a flower, and with a mental consciousness, if you perceive a flower, there is a difference. The divine presence is more revealed the higher you go and access a higher and higher levels of consciousness. That is what occultism is. Occultism reveals what surrounds us, how we are entangled in a universal relationship with all of us. So there are 3 levels of consciousness. I don't know, this is beyond the theme of today's. Can I go? Can I go ahead? Yes. Yeah. Okay, I will shorten it. There is what I was telling. There has to be a consciousness which is capable of understanding the manifestation. And that consciousness can be only of the consciousness of the Creator or the Divine. So the units of the many has got full access to this consciousness, but it is a unique entity. Our soul is a unique entity which is capable of manifesting a unique type of vibrations to the world and enjoy the same type of vibrations in the world. One soul cannot replace another soul in the orchestra. I cannot replace you, the violinist cannot be replaced by a drummer and things like that, So we are moving towards a harmonious team of human beings. The nucleus is referred as in the Theosophical literature. We should be very clear. We are not here to transform the humanity. We are here to create a nucleus of Theosophists who are capable of realizing the soul. In the mission statement, you will see in the first sentence, in the middle, a deeper knowledge. What do we mean by the deeper knowledge? Originally, the Theosophical system has got 3 objects, everybody knows it. But now, it is pinpointing to our responsibility of go deeper and deeper. You will be serving the humanity in a better way if you know yourself deeper and deeper.
Now we would like to go through the nature of this divine seed. And when I think about it, I often have in mind the analogy with light. As Brother Arundale reported after his experiences with Nirvana, he said that all is light, and that man is light, and that he could perceive the light in every atom, as in the beautiful words of Annie Besant in the Universal Prayer. And on this subject, I would add also some lines from The Light on the Path, stating, "For within you is the light of the Word, the only light that can be shed upon the path." When I think about this divine seed, it is like when we read a book and we look at the words, we look at the lines, we try to understand the meaning, we see the spaces among the words and among the lines, but we are ignoring the paper on which the book is done, is built. I believe this divine seed is the paper of the book. But when we read the book, we don't see it. Well, Isis, would you like to add something?
Maybe in a very different angle. Yes, I like very much analogies. Of course, we cannot think that the analogy is the thing, but at least makes us have an idea, no? I like very much the idea that of the material world is the glove we use. So the divine seed is life. The divine seed is the being itself. But, well, let's put the being itself as a hand. When we put a glove, a very thick glove, it's like not having hands. Because you cannot perform the actions you want because the material part is too thick. But as the development goes on through purification and self-development, the glove will become more and more and more thin in order to permit the real being to function in the material world. And that, as far as I can see, is a Jiva Mukta, a person that is incarnated, that is reversed with a material body, a material vehicle, but can act spiritually, freely in this world. So, what is the nature of the divine seed? It is life. The problem is the obstacle that matter creates for its manifestation. So we have to deal in a way that allows the divine seed to grow and to manifest itself in the material world.
Brother Doug, please.
It was asked, can we know the divine seed? And I think all of us would like to know the divine seed, the inner immortal part of our nature, more deeply. I think the first step is to know that it's there, to know that it's in us, in each individual, and it's connected with divinity. And then we want to know more about it. We want to search. It's part of our pilgrimage to look deep into ourselves and to realize that we're more than our lower bodies. I think analogies are helpful. The sun is so radiant, but at night or on a cloudy day, we do not see it. It doesn't mean that the sun is not just as radiant as ever, but it's similar to the glove Isis mentioned. Or analogy I like is the mirror. The mirror reflects the higher and the lower, but the mirror is not always clear or pure. It becomes dusty. How does it become dusty? It becomes dusty through our daily activities, our desires, our thoughts, our impurities. And our job is to look into ourselves and to each other and realize that that's the unity, and through that devotion and compassion, we can remove some of that dust, and gradually we get a clearer image of the divine within us. And as we recognize that, and as we feel it, and as we identify with it, then we can move forward and function in the world. Thank you.
Yeah. So the question is, what is the divine seed and how we know about it? How come we are not aware of that up to now? We all know that it starts as a spark, the beginning of the evolution, passes through the plants, then the animals, then reaches the human stage. In Isha Upanishad, there's a reference that what has started as a spark has become a flame of the size of a thumb, angusha matra. That's it. It's a specific divine presence is there within us. It is to realize that it is becoming more and more self-conscious. What it is doing in time and space is, through each birth, it creates its own mental and vital and physical sheath, an instrumentation for itself to perceive and experience the objective world. So it is an entity by itself. It's one member of the multiplicity, which has to take its own rightful position in time and space through evolution. So what is happening within us is, in a particular birth, what we call as Chaitya Purusha. It has got a name in Sanskrit called Chaitya Purusha. This Chaitya Purusha is a soul entity, highly evolving at different stages of evolution. It takes birth in a particular, out of its own choice. When it reaches a stage in which it can select its own place of birth and parents and things like that, it is more conscious and it is capable of implementing the program with which it has come to earth. It is through this experience that it grows. So we should not think that it is just a spark lying somewhere in connection with us. No. It is because of that we are here. It is not the other way around. We should not think that we are a self-sustaining system. No. You are here in time and space because the soul has taken birth. And you are on the instrumental side. You are the vehicle. From the vehicle, you have to become the owner of the vehicle. That's what you have to see. In fact, you are the owner. But to realize the owner without losing the vehicle. You know, we can say that in meditation, what we do is we shift from the instrumentation side towards the self side or the soul side. But what we require is a soul manifesting through nature, manifesting through our instrumentation. So the divine presence, when we talk of the divine seed, we are talking of further evolution, maybe the next race with intuitive beings. So we should not stop having intellectual achievements and things like that. No, that is not there. You have to go up and again. And in Theosophy, we have got an opportunity to intellectually know this and practice. Thank you.
Is there any other way to reach this inner smile? I like to think about it as an inner smile inherent to us. And I believe that silence can be a good way to go through this process because, as Rumi said, silence is the language of God. Everything else is poor translation, he said. So I'm asking Isis or Isis, what does she think about it?
Your question is there another way of accessing this divine seed? Oh, somehow we are this divine seed, no? Without this divine seed, we would already be dead, no? It is the divine seed that keeps us alive, no? So, in a certain way, we are in contact with this divine seed all the time. The big problem is that we don't realize. So, I think what you said about silence is a perfect way of communicating with the thinner in us, with the subtle in us. No, if our personality do too much noise, how can we hear the sound of this inner bird that is singing, no? We have to live in a way that allows us to hear this voice of the silence.
The more, if we quote the voice of the silence, who says, if you are unable to perceive it within you, it is useless to look elsewhere. Brother Doug, please.
Yes, it can be challenging to look for the divine seed, and as we want to develop a deeper sense of our inner self, our divine self, I think we have to be a bit cautious to not have it be single-mindedness. Last summer at the United States and America conference, Pablo Sender spoke, and I don't have the exact quote, but he said something to the effect, I'll paraphrase him, he said, the spiritual man or woman may not know if they're on the path or not. And what's more, they're not really concerned whether they're on the path or not, because they're not focused on necessarily their own progress, but looking elsewhere and helping humanity, regardless how it may affect them personally. And there's a quotation that I don't have exactly, so I'll paraphrase again from the Masters. It's in the little Masters excerpts for daily meditation, where they say, once you have all the ingredients, once the divine seed is planted and you have fertile soil and water, you need to let it be. You need to let it germinate. You need to let it grow and unfold naturally. And if you constantly touch or pick at the plant, or the seedling, it can die. So sometimes taking attention away from our own divine seed is the best way to nurture it. And there's a particular passage in Light of the Path, which I'm sure many, if not all of you know, but it's about how do you develop self-knowledge, number 136. And HPB says, shalt thou abstain from action? Not so shall gain the soul her freedom. To reach nirvana, one must reach self-knowledge, and self-knowledge is of loving deeds the child. So loving deeds is the path to self-knowledge and knowledge of the divine seed, not necessarily, there are techniques, and those techniques can be helpful, but awareness and altruistic deeds to help unfold yourself naturally rather than artificially.
So we are talking about how to come into contact with the divine seed. For that we should know every minute to minute. Now for example, I am sitting here, you are listening and things like that. So where is the divine seed and what we are doing and what we understand out of this connection? Is there a relation about all this? We know that it is the divine seed which activates our life every second, even in sleep. But we are not aware of that. It's a one-way traffic. It comes from inside out, but we are always objectivizing. We wanted information from outside and all those things. That's how we live. So what is the problem now? We should know exactly what is the problem, why we are not becoming aware of the divine seed. That's the question. For example, the Chaitya Purusha, the soul element, always it is good and love and harmonious vibrations it sends out. For example, it sends out a vibration of love. But because of the inferiority and degradation of our vital being, we translate it as lust. You see the difference? The divine vibration of love manifesting through us finds itself manifest as lust. That's the problem. It influences your mind to, for example, go and visit the lecture, read that book, go to the Theosophical Society, That's the influence it gives. It always directs the nature towards the divine realization. Go to the environment, these things you don't do. We have got what you call as morality, ethics, all those things are to purify our own instrumentation so that the divine vibration can manifest exactly as it should. But we know that it is not possible because in evolution, our physical system has come up out of animality. We have an animal in the physical system. Mentally you may be pure, but there are certain vibrations which is very difficult for us to control. For example, the reproductive and digestive system. These are the two major problems currently we are facing. We cannot live without food, but then the type of food we are taking and the, what do you call that, greed for eating. These are all the contributions of the degradation of the nature. But food is required. There can be a sattvic food which you can have the rasa. Rasa means you can enjoy food and equally actually. But the degradation is there because our system is 90% animal and only 10% human. First, we have to become human, then only we can become a spiritual, what we call as spirituality. So the problem is a self-awareness which has to make you aware of the system and how the things are working. In Upanishads, there is an example of two birds sitting in one bird in the lower branch, another bird in the upper branch. The lower bird is involved, the soul entangled in evolution, and the higher bird sitting in the higher branch is a witness to the evolution. If you have read Krishnamurti's literature, he always tells that there is an observer in you, you activate that. This is the two sides of the same coin. The soul entangled in the evolution and the soul observing is the same. But in evolution, it has to first get the experience and reach a stage where it can aspire to become the witness. It can turn itself into the mode of a witness. And if it can do that, that's what the meditation, vipassana meditation, all those things takes you away from the involution and from the evolutionary field towards the observer effect. J. Krishnamurti, in all of his literature, he emphasizes, be an observer, don't be an actor, be an observer. So by observing, we say that in Indian system we call it Purusha and Prakriti. Prakriti is a natural part, Purusha is the subjective consciousness. As I have told earlier, for the first time in space and time, a subjective consciousness called the divine presence is emerging to come into play in this time and space world.
I would like to add a little bit more on this subject. I think the growth of the divine seed, or to to link ourselves with the divine seed, we can call spiritual path, has two legs to walk. And these two legs are compassion and self-development. No? The 144 aphorism of the Voice of the Silence says very clearly that to live to benefit humanity is the first step, and to practice the 6 paramitas is the second. So we start with compassion, living to benefit humanity, but after we have to develop ourselves, because we cannot give what we don't have. So if we don't develop ourselves, what can we give to humanity, you know? And in this way, I'd like to share with you a quote that I also didn't find it in English. I put it in my own words. It's a quotation of Mahatma M to Mary Gebhardt, and it is in Jinar Jadasa's compilation of the letters, second series. And it's very interesting because he puts it in this way of self-development and compassion together. And he says to Mary Gebhardt, "We are taking, lady, to the vortex of our destiny, prepared previously by ourselves, as the ship goes to the maelstrom." Maelstrom is a big turmoil, a big problem for ships in North Europe. Now you start to understand this. What are you doing? What are you going to do? You cannot resist your destiny. Are you ready to do your part in the great work of philanthropy? You offered yourself to work for the Red Cross, but daughter, there are wounds of the soul that cannot be cured by the art of any physician. Will you help me to teach humanity that the ills of the soul should cure themselves? Your action will be your answer. So, who are the ones that have our souls more or less sick, living in a world of suffering, living in a world of misery? We. And they say that we must cure ourselves. And we must help humanity to know that each one of us must cure him or herself. And it finished, your action will be your answer. It's not only blah, blah, blah. What are you doing to help humanity? And helping humanity, as also the Mahatma says, is the best way of helping yourself. Because as you are in a compassive mood, you also get help to overcome your limitations.
I want to stress also another concept, another idea. When we talk about this divine seed, we talk about something we have to reach. But in doing so, we forget that we are that divine seed here. We are the divine seed now. It is here, it is in us, it is here that we shine. We are shining in this moment. And now and here we have the chance to live in the eternal, now and here. And it is now and here that we have to realize it, because it is the only time we have, this now and here. It is the only moment we have at our disposal. So please, let's shine. And Dear Brother Doug, please.
I think the symbol of the seed is very important because it's undeveloped, it's nascent, it has such potential. But I think we have to realize in spirituality, it's the seed that's within our lower bodies. The immortal soul is much further developed. In fact, the unity that we participate in is eternal and fully developed, does not need to change. It's only that a piece of this, a spark, a seed, comes down into our own self that is not fully developed, and that's our pilgrimage and our evolution to try to develop that. HPB spoke to this in The Secret Doctrine, and she put it this way. The lotus, or Padma, is, moreover, a very ancient and favorite symbol for the cosmos itself, and also for man. The popular reasons given are, firstly, the fact just mentioned, that the lotus seed contains within itself a perfect miniature of the future plant, which typifies the fact that the spiritual prototypes of all things exist in the immaterial world before these things become materialized on earth. So I think it's critical to understand that divinity already exists, and as it reaches down into the mental, astral, physical worlds, it comes into us as a seed, as a small instrument, a small voice, the voice of the silence. And if we can only attune our ears to listen to it, if we can only find the water to nurture that seed so that it can grow, it can become its fully developed self, which in fact it already is.
So when we talk about the seed, there's a question, what has come first? The seed has come or the tree has come first? What is the answer for that? Without the seed, there is no tree. Without the tree, there is no seed. So it's difficult to answer. There has to be a third level of point in which we should look for, and that is the divine idea. As we have already talked earlier, it is idea which exists as an essential idea, which comes into factual, becomes potential in time and space, then through us it manifests like that. So when we talk about the divine seed, it actually represents a unique idea of the divine which has to manifest through us. We are the instrumentation through which it has to manifest. So this manifestation, we should be very clear about the traffic of this whole movement of the divine vibration, and we should know how to place ourselves in the middle of all this. Now, for example, Buddhism, there is an example. You are flowing a river, you are flowing in the water, helpless, you are carried away by the water. If you are capable of standing on a river bed, then you have got a static support for a dynamic movement. This is what, when we say that Purusha and Prakriti, right now we are flowing in the Prakriti, we are being lived through by nature. We are helpless creatures until and when you find out your own static foundation, called the observer, the Purusha side of the Prakriti, then you will have a standpoint in which the soul can come and manifest. So in meditation, what we are looking at as a silence, or whatever terminology we use in different philosophies, what we are moving is moving inward towards a static support. An observer is already there within us. We had some courses for the Vasandakanya Mahavidyalaya college students. They are children not conversant with philosophy, but more conversant with psychology. So they used to ask, sir, give us an example of how to do it. So I used to tell them that you start with the physical action. Start observing your own physical action. Every day we take bath, we go to the bathroom, and just watch how your physical body is giving bath to itself. You will see that every day the same routine matter is conducted. It takes the soap, applies in the same place, applies the water as it is, absolutely no change. You observe that. There is a physical observation. Now, for example, if you take a mug of water and pour it on your head, if you are observing it, you will see that about 20-30% of the water goes off. The rest of the things goes on to your head. So it will improve the physical efficiency. You observe, this is an excellent, a formula for excellence in physical work. You should also observe all your actions. You start with the physical system, then come into the emotional vital system, start observing. You know, the observer. Then you come to the mind when you sit for meditation. If you start with the mind, most probably it will be very difficult. You will be carried away by the thoughts. But if you have already practiced, an observer is already evolving within you, who has already observed your physical action. He has already observed your vital desires and emotions. The moment you observe it, you will see that it stops. The Purusha comes into picture. Without the consent of the Purusha, it cannot activate. You are given a blank check. So when you come to the mental meditation, if you are already installed an observer within you, most likely that you will be able to observe your thoughts. You should start from the physical, then come to the vital, then to the mental. This is one of the process of coming into contact with the seed.
Yes, this process is very interesting, you know, this process of putting together spirit and matter, as it's normally said. As far as I can see, there is a double process. A process, let's say it like that, that comes from above below, which in Christianity it's called grace. That is the manifestation of this energy, of this divine life. But there is also a process from below above. As far as I could hear, Brother Ravi Ravrinda calls it yajna, sacrifice. Matter offers some obstacles, so we must sacrifice the grosser in order to realize the thinner, no? So we must take out the obstacles that prevent the grace to flow, no? So if we put in theosophical terms, the divine seed is Atma. Reverse it with Buddhi. Buddhi is the vehicle of Atma. And Buddhi, as we can study, we can realize, is the being, its happiness, and its intelligence. And why this Buddhi nature doesn't manifest itself completely? Because there are obstacles. And we should, from down above, to remove its obstacles so that the Buddhi nature will manifest itself completely.
I think it's a key part of theosophy to understand that we evolve spiritually and that others have tread the path before us. The adepts have gone from ordinary men and lower classes before that, men and women, and have ascended this path of connecting with the divine nature and opening their spiritual side more completely. And they say repeatedly in many quotations that we can follow them, we can tread the path and unfold. There's a quotation from Annie Besson in her London lectures talking about the adepts related to this, and she says, in him, meaning the adept, in him the divine seed of spirit has unfolded into flower and fruit. When you sow a seed in the soil of your garden, You sow it in the full belief that it will grow, that it will become a plant with leaf and flower and fruit. So the potential is unlimited. It's difficult for us sometimes to see in our mundane and physical existence, but the seed is there, not only the seed of divinity, but the expansion to the unity that unites us all, and that we share this experience with all our brothers and sisters in the world. Thank you.
It is as a kind of precious gift that we received at birth. Such a priceless gift that we have hidden it somewhere, and we are not, and now we are not able to remember where we have put it. But of course, we are doing our best to search for it. And I see it as a kind of open secret, like the paper we have talked about, like the sun, like the globe, something we have here and now, but we are not aware of. And I would like to ask to everybody if they have something to add, because time is running. We have very few minutes to finish. So, Brother Narayan.
Our mission of life should be discovery of the soul. Read the mission statement again and again. If you want to become a perfect theosophist, it is not through mental idea, but a deeper and deeper understanding of yourself, oneself. I think that should be the message we should carry from here when we go home. Until we meet the next time in Adyar, we should see that whether we have been able to reach some depth in our own being.
I'd like to finish with some quotes from The Voice of the Silence. At the very end, aphorism 307, where HPB says, can there be bliss when all that lives must suffer? Shall thou be saved and hear the whole world to cry? And aphorism 309 answers, if thou wouldst be Tathagata, follow upon deep processor steps, remain unselfish until the endless end.
Speaking again of the divine seed and flowering, this is a quote from Mabel Collins on the Light of the Path commentary, and she's talking about the adept, and she says, his life is not his own, but that of forces which work behind him. He is the flower of humanity, the bloom which contains the divine seed. So I think this is a good way to remember. The forces are behind us. The life is not our own, but the life that we live for the divine. It can elevate us. We often say, well, what do I want? Well, maybe what I want has very little to do with it. There are forces behind us propelling us, and we want to listen to that voice. At first a whisper, but if we follow it, it will grow louder.
Well, I thank you, Doug, Brother Narayan, and Isis for their beautiful thoughts on the theme. But before closing, I would like to thank Sabine van Osta, who was prevented to chair the panel, but who prepared a kind of a list of things or questions to be answered to facilitate our work. So I thank her so much, and I exhort you all to fall in love with your divine seed, because it is the best way to find all we can wish. Thank you for your attention and all the best. Thank you.